welcome back to the hills. It's been a while since I've been on here and just ran my mouth, so that's exactly what I'm going to do today. Been thinking a little bit about getting ready for fall, that summer/late spring, miserable time of year on whitetail deer prep. And I've been going to a few of my normal spots that I go to every year, every spring, every summer, setting them up the way I do every single year. And, when I take other people with me and explain to them what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, the question always comes up of trail cameras and how I utilize them and what I do. Now, if you've spent any time in the outdoor industry, watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, whatever the case may be, you've heard everyone's opinion on trail cameras, what they feel about them, whether they're good, bad, whatever the case is. So don't think that what I'm about to speak on today is like, you have to do this or you're not going to be successful in the Appalachian Mountains, because when it comes to trail cameras, it's mostly user biased, meaning there are certain things that you're going to do that I don't necessarily like doing myself, or certain things that I'm going to do that just makes no sense for how you hunt on a day-to-day basis. Or if you were just to come to Southern Appalachia and visit for, like, let's say a 4-day hunt, wouldn't make sense for you. So take everything I'm going to say with a grain of salt today. Use what you like, scrap what you don't like, or maybe if you're kind of in between, just try it out for a season, maybe 2, maybe even just a few weeks, and see if it works for you. Again, this is all opinion based. There is no, I don't care what anyone says, there is no black and white when it comes to, well, first of all, anything in the whitetail woods, but especially with tools such as trail cameras, so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, that's all this is. It's a tool. You can, just like any other tool, you can use it correctly, you can use it incorrectly, and sometimes the incorrect way of using it actually gets the job done that you need it to get done. Whether that's what it was intended for or not, it's still getting that job done. Like if I take a hammer and I use it to, let's say, break, brick or something that is not just driving a nail or removing a nail, right? Like it's still getting the job done that I want it to. Or if I use a crescent wrench as a hammer, or you get what I'm saying, or hopefully you get what I'm saying, that it's a tool. Use it however you want to use it. You spend the money on it, you use it however you want to. So anyways, I'll stop blabbing about that. If you're watching this and not listening to this, forgive me. It is the 2nd or 3rd day of summer and it is hot. So I will be sweating quite a bit. And also, yet again, I have another allergy cold, so forgive the coughing today. I'll try to keep it as minimal as possible. I say that and I cough. All right. So to start it all off, it's 2025. I would safely say that 80% of the whitetail hunting population has utilized a trail camera in one way, shape, or form in their life. Whether they used it once and they loved it and they live by it, or they used it once and they hated it and they'll never touch it again. And I am kind of in the middle on that line. There was a time when I was younger, probably about 10 years ago, where I lived by the trail camera. That was also a time when I tried to target deer. I used to go out there and try to find a deer and target that one specific deer. And I would keep myself up late at night over him. I would, chase him to the ends of the earth and pass up on deer that would have made me just as happy as he would have, simply because I put a target on him. Right. And if that's what you do, don't take what I just said as me knocking it. I completely understand that thrill and that chase and that aspect of whitetail deer hunting. And I respect those who do it and love doing it highly. However, every time I've tried to implement that into my hunting skill, I've ended up obsessing, and in turn, not necessarily not having fun, but missing out on opportunities that I would have had I not done it. Again, not knocking anybody who does do that. So we'll get off that topic. But then on the flip side of that, there's people who maybe this is you, because I know it was me for a while, obsess over what the camera is or is not telling them. And to me, if you start obsessing over, a deer coming through on a certain plant or a certain time of day, or he isn't daylighting or he's daylighting now, whatever it is, if you start obsessing over it and start taking what this one camera or maybe two or three tells you and as the gospel, right? You're taking it as, okay, he's going to be here on X, Y, and Z days at X, Y, and Z times. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Well, that's a very small picture of what that deer is actually doing and why that deer is doing it. If you're hunting public, or even if you're hunting smaller pieces of private with neighbors besides you, you don't know if that deer maybe got pressured into that area for a day or two, or maybe he's being pressured out of it, or whatever that case may be. You're missing the broad picture. And more dangerous than that of taking the gospel, and this is one that my old man is guilty of, is thinking that you're constantly needing to go out there. This being a cell cam, being able to see it remotely is probably the saving grace when it comes to the cameras that I still run. But, I think of people who are in areas that you can't run a cell cam because you don't have service, or maybe it's just not in your budget and you're running SD card cameras. My old man's guilty of, he'll go out there every 2 weeks to pull a card, and you start doing that in April, May, June timeframe, and you're going out there every 2 weeks. Eventually you are going to push the matured buck out of there. Yeah, sure, your younger deer might stay in there and your does might stay in there. And depending on, like if you're in a suburban environment or anywhere where there might be a lot of human presence, he may stick around the area. But the chances of him, if you've got that camera set up on your stand or your food plot or bait pile or whatever it is that you have it set up on, the chances of him coming to that area are probably not that great. Or when he does, it's probably going to be at nighttime, which does you no good. Right. So these are just little aspects that I'm maybe trying to warn about. Like, we as humans have this thing where we want this instant gratification, right? This instant reward of, I found him, I won, right? But at the end of the day, this whole hunting thing is not based and circled around a camera, and it can't be. And if we let it become that, I think that A, we're missing the entire purpose of the hunt, and B, we end up hurting ourselves more than we do helping ourselves, right? And I know you've probably heard it a million times before. I'm not the first, nor will I be the last to speak on that aspect of a trail camera, but that's something we really have to hone in on. Of, hey, a little goes a long way. So how do I use them? Right? I've been running my mouth for 10 minutes now. How do I utilize a camera? Well, I've only got a couple out, and where I put them is on places that I want to bring a deer into for whatever reason. And usually those are places that I'm not hunting. There's one exception to that rule that I have right now. But other than that, what I'll do is like this time of year, especially whenever does are starting to fawn and whenever the bucks are starting to grow antlers, is I'll go out and I'll set up mineral sites. And all I'm using that camera for, A, is to kill boredom, but B, and more importantly, is to kind of get an inventory, if you will, on how the herd is looking for the year. Okay. That way I can set up my realistic expectation of what it is that I want to pursue in that given area. So here in Western North Carolina, specifically the area that I'm in, we're not known for giant deer. You know, you get 135 to 145 inch deer, you've done something. I mean, you have been very successful. You've put your time in. You've used your woodsmanship and the scouting and everything I've spoke on in previous episodes. But that 135 to 145, 150 inch class, that is a dandy, right? But maybe that block of woods that I'm hunting doesn't hold that, or maybe, you know, we had disease come through, or maybe last year I took out the only 140 inch deer that was in that general area, and, you know, 1 year wasn't enough time to bring in that mature buck for the following season. You know, I'd say about 60 to 70% of the time I'm hunting big timber, you know, big, mundane, mature timber, and there's a lot of room to roam. So the old, you know, theory, which is a correct one, I'm not discrediting it by any means, that if you kill a mature buck, one will come in and fill its place by next season. Not always the case in the big hardwoods, as far as within that bedding area that I discovered. Will it happen? Yes, of course it will. But that's what I'm getting at, is I can use that camera to decide, if I want to hunt it, right? Like if all that's in there is some year and a half old bucks, maybe I leave that place alone for the season and back out. Or maybe I go in early season and take a doe or two to fill the freezer, and I back out and I leave it alone, or whatever the case may be. And then if I do decide, like, hey, there's a couple of deer in there that you know have my interest, at least I know what to hold out for, right? So some years, maybe 120 inch class deer is going to be, you know, the mature 4 or 5 year old buck. Or maybe some years all that's walking around is year and a half olds to 3 year olds, and I decide to leave it alone. And then maybe, you know, every 5 years you get lucky and there's that 6, 7 year old 150 inch deer. And I know that I need to be smart when I hunt it, and B, like, hey, he's in there. Let's go after him. And obviously that kind of contradicts what I was saying about targeting deer, but more or less I'm targeting an expectation is what I'm using the camera for. I am setting an expectation for myself on what the reality is in the particular property that I'm hunting, by not necessarily setting the camera where I want to hunt, right? I'm going to set, like I said, you know, either a mineral site or a food plot, or even a bait pile. You know, I'll set that bait pile a few 100 yards away from where I actually think he's bedding at, or where he could potentially be bedding at, or where his natural browse may be, or, which is very hard to do in the big woods, but maybe I know where, you know, he likes to rut at, as far as like where he likes to pin does up at. Whatever that case is, I'm going to get a couple 100 yards away from that. So I don't introduce a lot of unnecessary pressure in there. And B, I'm not just targeting in on one specific location. I'm kind of almost setting like a community area, if you will. That way I can actually get a better grasp and a better understanding of what is in my area, right? And then, like I said, I can make decisions on what I want to do in the fall from there. And then another situation, which I'll probably lean a little bit heavier on this year than I have in previous years, simply because of my new adventures up in Kentucky, is setting one on mock scrape areas. Usually I'm not going to hunt the mock scrape. There are exceptions. I typically prefer to hunt natural scrapes, natural rubs. I prefer to hunt something that the deer naturally created. There's a lot of biology involved in that. You can read a plethora of books that will kind of explain why I go about it that way. But in you know, a very, very easy to understand explanation, I'll say If the deer is naturally causing that, that's because it's on his natural path of travel, whether it be to his food source, his bedding area, his rut staging zone, or however you like to word that. The more natural, the more I am to hunt. If I am creating it, if I as a human am causing the disturbance, I'm typically not going to hunt it. I just like to be where the deer is in his natural environment. Same with like prepping trees, which is a conversation for another day. But like, I'm not one that's big on prepping trees or anything of that nature. I basically, my stand goes in and my stand goes out unless I leave it overnight to hunt the next morning. Which you may disagree with, and that's fine. It works for me. It's how I'm successful, and it's how I enjoy hunting. I don't like spending all summer cutting out shooting lanes. But let's get back on the topic of trail cameras. So that's how I personally like to implement them. I have implemented them in other ways. Obviously, I've spoke on that earlier. I've at one point in time had upwards of a dozen cameras in one, we'll call it 60-acre plot of property, because I knew there was a deer in there and I was trying to figure him out. And I did figure him out, and I ended up seeing him. I didn't get to shoot him for my own stupid mistakes whenever he actually presented the opportunity, I guess I should say, not the shot. Obviously, he didn't present the shot or he'd be on my wall. But when I do that, a few things tends to happen. The most detrimental to my hunt is he figures me out, right? I don't care how well you hide that. He's eventually going to either see it or smell it. You go in there and you set up enough of them, he's going to figure out that it doesn't belong there. Now, how he reacts to it, that's 100% dependent on him and his personality and how spooky he is, and maybe how many negative interactions he's had, be it a hunter or a camera or whatever the case is, right? And if he does react, you could potentially blow him out of the area. But if he doesn't react, regardless, he knows something in that area is a little bit different, and maybe not necessarily always on high alert, but when he's in those areas with those cameras in those locations, which typically when you have that many cameras set up, you're going to hunt with, within a few hundred yards at the least, he's going to know to start paying attention while he's around there. He's smelled it. He's seen it. He knows that, all right, I don't know really understand what this predator is, but I know he's in the area and I need to, be on high alert when I come through here. So regardless of whether you bump him out or just alert him to you being there, you are not hunting a deer in his natural environment, if you will. You are hunting a very alerted animal, especially if you're going after mature bucks. You get, like, if you're just a freezer filler, yeah, you can probably get away with it. Like, I've got a camera set up on a mineral site right now where there's 2 does that come through every day. And I guarantee if I were to go sit a stand out there at 5 feet where they could see me, they would just, as long as I didn't move, they would walk right on by and consider it, let bygones be bygones. But if we're in, the mindset of harvesting at least a mature animal, not necessarily a Boone and Crockett class, but a mature animal, you're probably going to do more harm than good setting a lot of trail cameras up. And this might be information that you already know, but if it's not, at least have it in the back of your head while you're setting your cameras for the year. Now, I talked about my old man and his obsession with checking cameras. I used to have that obsession. I used to, before the whole invention of, or not invention, but the popularity of cell cameras, it was just SD cameras, right? I'd go to my local Walmart and get the cheapest SD cameras that I could find. That way I had, a butt ton of them. And then I'd set them out in good spots. I mean, they would get photos, but then basically like clockwork, every 2 weeks, I was out there swapping SD cards. And the first 1 or 2 times, it wouldn't really, have a huge impact on what the deer were doing, but you start doing that all summer long, especially when, you're getting closer and closer to the actual opening of season. The deer start figuring you out. They're going to know which way you're coming in from. They're going to know what you smell like. They're going to know, if they're in a bedding area close by, they're going to know what your feet sound like. They're going to know you're there. And if you don't bump them out, they know you're there and they know not to come by you, because they've already, the same way that you are trying to pattern the animal with the camera, they're going to pattern you the more and more you check on them. So if you're in an area and you're in a financial place where you can afford it, a cell camera is going to be the way to go if you are going to use one. I will argue that one until I'm in the grave. A really high quality battery, or if you can figure out how to hide them well, the solar panels, the solar, charging systems that most all cell cameras make, basically like a set it once and be done type thing, right? Try your absolute best to basically set it up and be done. Now, if you're setting up mineral sites, obviously you have to freshen those up. If you're setting out bait like corn or anything like that, you obviously have to freshen that up, but do it as minimal as possible. Like if you can set up time feeders to make the corn last longer, or put your mineral down in bulk or anything of that nature, whatever you can do to put as little presence as possible in and around the camera site and in and around where you're predicting that these deer are going to be. Now, obviously, you set that camera in there and a month goes by and you're not seeing anything you want. Go through there, pull the camera, get out of the area. Maybe don't scrap it. Keep it in the back of your mind of, I had a couple does in there. I can go and fill a freezer, whatever the case is. But if you are in a good, quote unquote, good spot, staying off the camera and not, going and checking on it. Oh, the strap's blowing in front of the lens today. Like, check all those things before you leave. All those little details. Like, is this leaf going to blow every 20 minutes and set the camera off, which is going to, kill my battery? Maybe I need to get that limb out of the way or knock that grass down. Whatever you've got to do, spend 2, 3, 4 hours in there with the camera one time, rather than spending 5-10 minutes every other week trying to fix the things that you're noticing that the camera is failing on. Like I mentioned, leaves blowing or whatever that case may be. And this all might be pretty common knowledge stuff, but to me, like, it's stuff that I almost constantly have to be reminded about, because it's like, in the moment, I'm so amped and thinking about, when September and October and November roll around, that I can kind of get a little bit lazy and forget these things. When we think of like what we want the camera to do for us, if you're the kind of person who wants to stay out of the woods until the camera says, hey, this deer is daylighting, that's great. If you're the kind of person like me who just wants to get an inventory, that's great. If you're the kind of person who is targeting a specific buck and you've got cameras set up in 8 different counties and you're basically tracking his entire movement 24/7 around, year round, every day of the week, that's great too. The biggest thing that I suggest to you, though, is establish what you want to do before you even go into the woods to set your cameras up. Okay. If you are I'm a targeting deer kind of guy or gal, decide that before you start your season, and challenge yourself to commit to whatever it is that you are doing for at least a season, or a year, right? For one whole calendar year, challenge yourself to not stray from that path. So if you're targeting a deer, target him, focus on him for a year. Don't change up anything that you're doing as far as your tactics are concerned. And then you build on the next year. Okay, I don't like targeting deer. I want to target mature deer. Develop a tactic and a plan and a strategy for that. Okay, I don't like doing that. I want to do what Jordan does, and I just want to get an inventory, spend a year doing that. You're not going to figure out what it is that floats your boat, so to speak, until you actually give it the time and the due process to figure out how it is that you like to hunt. And more importantly than figuring out what you like is figuring out how to be successful in it, right? The way that I hunt, the style that I hunt in, basically, it took me probably 10 or 15 years to develop it and figure out how to do it, because I was constantly back and forth, bouncing back and forth between ideas and hearing all these other guys on YouTube. Well, this is how I do it, and this is how I do it, and this is how I do it. And like, yeah, that's a great idea. And yeah, that's a great idea. And they are all great ideas, right? Like if you click off of this podcast right now and you go listen to anybody else who has success and listen to how they do it, their ideas are great. Their ideas are great for their specific location, for their specific hunting style, for their specific financial situation, so on and so forth. You have to basically compile a list of ideas and form them up, and then from that, create your own playbook, if you will, on how it is that you're going to be successful and how you're going to hunt both preseason, postseason, and during season. Like what it is that you are going to do to formulate a plan to be the hunter that you want to be. And there is no right or wrong answer. And I don't care what anyone says. If you don't hear this from anyone else, you are right. Okay? However you're wanting to do it, you are correct in the way of doing it. As long as it is legal and ethical, yes, that's how you do it. You know, I've had people come up to me and be like, "Hey, Jordan, I'm targeting this specific buck. Do you think that's a good thing to do?" Yeah, it is. If it makes you happy, right? At the end of the day, it's your tag. It's however you want to hunt it. Hey, Jordan, I'm shooting the first legal thing that comes by. Is that correct? Yes, absolutely. If that is what makes you happy, if that is what gets your heart racing, if that's, what you dream about doing, the first legal thing that you see, letting an arrow fly. Yeah, absolutely. I don't care what anyone says. And if you don't hear it from anyone, you're hearing it from me right now. Yes, you are correct in how you do it. But you're never going to be quote unquote successful in your method until you buy into whatever your system is, right? Whether, like I said, it's the inventory thing or the targeting thing or whatever it is, you have to buy into your plan. You have to buy into your system and give it time to develop, because there is nothing in nature, as far as outdoors is concerned, hunting, that is created overnight, is built overnight. You see these successful guys on TV and on the internet. That did not happen overnight. Now, people go, well, yeah, they paid for the deer. Well, guess what? That money didn't happen overnight, right? Like, even if they were born into the money, someone somewhere along the line had to make the money. Okay. So even if we're talking high fence deer, that still did not happen overnight. There is a lot of hard work and time and dedication that has to go into it. And that's why this camera is just a tool to do that. And you can't let it be anything more than a tool. You cannot let it be the end all be all, like, oh, the camera did it, I'm going to be successful. And then you go out there and then you fall flat on your face and you're like, well, what the hell just happened? My camera said he was daylighting at 8:00 every Wednesday whenever the moon was at such and such location and the barometric pressure was 30 and rising. Right? Like, that's not how it works. There are so many little dominoes that we have to stack up before we can let it fall. Right? Like, and that's just from years and years and years of experience and learning and so on and so forth. Yes, you can read the books and make the learning curve a lot less steep. You can watch the videos, you can get the ideas, but eventually it will be up to you to, devise your plan, to come up with your plan, to implement your plan, and year after painstaking year to figure out what doesn't work that you need to just take out of your plan, throw away, and never revisit. What you need to sharpen, take that knife out and sharpen it up, get it, make sure, it's cutting a straight line for you. Or what is like, yes, this is my bread and butter right here. And I think That's what people fail to mention when they put out all these tips and trick videos. Is like, this is a tip. This is not an answer. This is a trick. This is not the cure, right? The answer and the cure is time afield. Okay, that it has been and always will be the only way to become successful. And for some people, that can be a lifetime. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, setting a camera, setting a food plot, setting a mineral site, a scrape, a stand, the hours spent driving, the boot rubber that's burnt doing scouting, the hours that you spend on the internet doing your e-scouting, the countless videos that you watch, the books that you read, it's all part of the process. And at the end of the day, the process is the most important part, right? Don't get so hung up in trophies and meat in the freezer that you forget that the journey is the most important and the most rewarding and successful part of what it is that we do, right? When you're sitting there in a tree stand and that camera dings 300 yards away in your pocket, if you're in a state where it's legal to do that, and you know that buck is coming, I hope and I pray that all the hard work that you've put in, all the countless hours and the dollars spent, and you know, the uncomfortable days in the summer and the freezing days in the stand in the winter, I hope it all just kind of like in that brief moment when you know it's about to go down, I hope it all just comes back to you, and you can remember it, and you can see it, and you can embrace it, and you can love what it is that you're doing out there in nature. Again, there is no right, wrong way to run this camera. Just, the only thing I beg of you is to remember that this is a tool. That's all this will ever be, is a tool. And as long as you can remember that this is a tool, that a trail camera is a tool, then I think you're going to be successful eventually. I think that you can implement it into a process that works for you. And over time, maybe you can share that process with me and everyone else on the internet. And you just add another little tool to someone else's tool bag. Okay. If you've gotten anything good, any good information out of my podcast, any of them, whether it be this one or scouting or any of that, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what it is that you guys are struggling with out there in the woods. If there's anything that I can, give you a tip on, whether it be through a direct message or I make a little video for you, let me know what it is that you might be struggling on. If you plan on coming to Appalachia to hunt, let me know what questions you might have about deer hunting here in Appalachia. Hit that like button if you're getting anything good out of this, and please subscribe. It lets me know that somebody's seeing this and enjoying the content. But until next time, I'll see y'all on the hill.